In case you don't have 15 minutes or so, I'll save you the time. I love Kingdom Rush, and I'm thrilled this game and all its expansions have joined my collection. And if you aren't familiar with Kingdom Rush is a Kickstarter game, or was a Kickstarter game. You can get this available at retail as well. This is mostly going to be a review of the core box, and if you're new to this channel, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I talk about games, Kickstarters, reviews, all these different things, and Kingdom Rush is a game, or is one of the most hyped about or most excited games for me personally that I've been looking forward to getting. And that excitement can go either way. Kickstarter and the journey it presents, board games in general, but Kickstarter more specifically, it presents this aspect of both directions. On the one hand, you build up this excitement, this interest, this I need to have this game, I'm so excited for the experience it will give me, that you potentially just get let down. You play the game and what otherwise would have been a decent experience just isn't as good as what you mentally prepped yourself for. And on the flip side, you can say that, investing all that money into a board game makes you blind to its flaws, willing to lie through all the things that are terrible about that game. But, to that end, I let games go because they generally hold their value. Check out my review of Reichbusters, which is probably another one of my most hyped about, most anticipated Kickstarters. And that one sadly wasn't an experience that delivered for me. It wasn't an experience that I was hoping it would be. Now, Kingdom Rush, to be clear, also has some curveballs, also has some aspects of the game that make it slightly different than what I pictured it would be, that has some cons and some pros in terms of what it actually brought to the table. But at the end of the day, I am thrilled about the experience that I have gotten. I am enjoying every single minute of this game as I go through the gameplay, as I've replayed some of the missions, and we'll cover that as well. And that's because this game is a hybrid of tower defense and Polyomino all wrapped up into a single board game. Now, the problem with those things is that tower defense as a game, as a genre, I love board games, I love video games, apps, and all that are tower defense, but in the board game space, tower defense as a genre has generally been a little bit lackluster. I would say arguably my favorite so far has been Besieged, and even that I have so many different criticisms of the way it implements that genre in the game itself. And tower defense, for those not familiar, is the general idea that you have waves of different enemies approaching your base, and then you build out these towers to slowly but surely take out those enemies, and you build up a better and stronger defense as the enemies ratchet up as well, and that combination of escalation on both sides lends itself to an experience that is immensely rewarding. And unfortunately, in most board games, that actual aspect has either been lacking in some degree, or does it well, but then has a degree of tediousness and maintenance that is unnecessary and unwanted in a board game. And then Polyomino, if you're not familiar, is the general idea that you have these various Tetris-shaped pieces that you're going to be laying on different things to fill certain things. And Kingdom Rush, what it does in this game is it gives you these boards full of enemies that you have to lay your Polyomino shapes over. So you get these different configurations, and you have to figure out how to use some sort of tower. You have these different towers you'll be placing down, and you'll place them down on these bases, and then take a Polyomino piece, put it on the invading horde, and cover up the various spots on that tile. And then you keep doing that. At the end of every round, you're going to have these hordes advance, moving closer towards your base, knocking your heroes out of the way. And then you also have these heroes. These heroes are a ton of fun to play with, because you then take your hero and you march him onto the spot, and then you lay down your slam hammer or whatever it is, smashing the spot as well, so you can both attack and take over these areas. And the combinations of your heroes, their abilities, and the towers will eventually lend itself to you taking out these hordes. Along the way, you're going to be presented with various complications, let's call them. Complications in the form of different abilities on these creatures that will move twice as fast. So perhaps if you don't cover the wolves on these tiles, they will move 2 spaces instead of 1, making your journey that much harder. Perhaps you didn't cover up the healers on a tile, and so they remove all the damage you've implemented on that tile if you haven't taken them out entirely. And then there's going to be various other abilities as you slowly go through the game, different things that prevent different types of damage, things that prevent your heroes from coming on it. Ability after ability on the enemy creatures will change up the configuration, change up the puzzle that is being presented. But the core of this game is baddies approach your base, attack them with towers that have Polyomino shapes to lay them over enemies, and then upgrade your towers along the way so you can get better, progressively stronger towers. Using the Arcane Wizard to drop down 6 points of damage on 2 different areas is, well, it's a fun feeling. Or perhaps you use your Holy Order to load up a card with a bunch of these soldier miniatures, dropping them on the tiles, and these soldier miniatures are adorable. And by the way, this is a good time to mention that this is actually an app. if you are familiar with it on iOS and Android, this is actually, Kingdom Rush itself is an app that is being converted into the board game space, and it captures the overall feeling of the app while being a vastly different experience. The art, the various hero soldiers, all that stuff, the heroes themselves, all those things are being ported over, so you'll encounter familiar characters and familiar settings and familiar overview, but the gameplay itself is obviously very different. As far as the game itself, there are so many different reasons why I love this game. There are so many different reasons why Kingdom Rush has been an immensely satisfying experience. Everything I hoped for, and then some. The miniatures are great. I mean, they're not necessarily, I guess I'd say they're great. They capture that cartoony feel of the game very well. They pull it out. They don't have an overwhelming number. They have 5 or 6, well, depending if you have expansions or whatnot, there's up to 5 or 6 different large bosses, and then a whole bunch of different heroes you can utilize, as well as, like I said already, these little soldier miniatures. And those, by the way, I should note, are from the Kickstarter, so if you bought the retail version, you'll have little meeples instead. Additionally, it's a Polyomino game, which is a genre of board games that I generally have liked. I have been very forgiving of Polyomino games in general. Whenever I play them, whenever I get them, I tend to like the experience they give, and I usually only get rid of them because another game does it better. I like the feeling of fitting together different Tetris-y shapes, and this game definitely delivers that with each of the puzzles presenting. You have to figure out where to put your towers, and you are limited as to where you can put your towers, when to shoot here, when to shoot there, when to move your heroes. It does give you a very Polyomino experience in all the facets that I like about that genre. It's tower defense, which in theory is a genre I like. In practice is a genre that has been hard to actually work in the board game space, but it does bias me towards wanting to like a game for sure. The game is challenging, and the difficulty scaling, in my opinion, is done very well. Now, I will note, I have seen people say this game is way too hard. I personally haven't felt that, and I'm not sure if it's because they aren't playing the game well, I'm not playing the game well, I'm not playing the game accurate, I don't know if I'm cheating in some way, but the game has this mechanism where you have to scale up your towers all the time. If you aren't immediately stopping yourself from losing, then instead of attacking someone, level up your tower. And as you do that, because every round you have the option of using a tower or leveling up that tower. And so using it is always so tempting to eliminate the board, all these enemies you have to face. But it's much better to actually level up that tower every single round, and so I've been doing that every single time I play. And while I have lost this game, I would say on the whole I have been winning. I have found it challenging. I have found it very often down to that last wire, and often figuring out how to reconfigure a turn so that I can actually win when I'm about to lose. But I have found that the scaling in the game works very well, in the sense that they give you 4 different levels of difficulty, or perhaps it's 5 different levels of difficulty. They have 4 basic tiers, and then an additional challenge mode on top of that. And they recommend starting you off smack dab in the middle at that 3rd level, and I have found that it works well. I haven't felt the need to up it, I haven't felt the need to lower it, but it does have that upping and lowering in case you find it too easy or too hard. The powers and abilities are going to be another reason why I like this game. Leveling up your towers is so much fun. Starting with a simple bombard that, launches 2 points of damage, and then upgrading it to the mighty Big Bertha, launching 9 points of damage. It is immensely rewarding. It's delayed gratification at its core. Don't use your towers, hold off, try to do whatever you can to not utilize them, and then slam the enemy down with tons and tons of Polyomino shapes raining down on top of them. Polyomino shapes raining down on top of them is probably not a sentence that is normally uttered in the universe, but in this case it certainly is. And then the heroes are all going to come with their own abilities as well, different things that they can do, both from using Malik to stomp on an enemy tile and deal like up to 8 points of damage in a single shot is immensely rewarding. And that's his basic starting ability. That's not even using anything complicated. As you level him up, you can do things like protecting yourself, or perhaps refreshing other characters' abilities. There's all these different options you have at your disposal. And so the fact that the heroes and abilities and all that stuff, it gives you different configurations, different options, different things that make this game fun, interesting. It is immensely rewarding. The game gives you that slow unlocking feeling that the app gives you as well. Now, it does unlock things faster than the app, in the sense that the app will draw it out longer, but that's also because you can play the app in 4 minutes per level, and this game will be significantly longer than 4 minutes per level. But as you go through those intro scenarios, you'll slowly but surely unlock more heroes, unlock more levels of towers, unlock your spells and abilities of your characters, and it gives you that unlocking progress that the app delivers. And then, of course, if you make your way through the base game, you can additionally unlock all the expansion content if you have gotten that to the table. There's so much about the experience that is fun, and it really does deliver that Polyomino tower defense game that I've been looking for. As far as the things I didn't like in this game, there are going to be two things that I didn't like in this game. And to begin with, and this is sadly a big one, the game is fiddly. The game is very fiddly in what it's doing here. The actual moving of the boards and the trays, that works perfectly fine. They've done it so they have these little trays that you're going to slot these enemy cards into. You slide them along with everything on them, slide them along the board. It works very well. But the Polyomino, to begin with, we have this giant little horde of Polyomino tiles that represents all the different shapes you can cast on these spots. And the different types of damage do matter, and managing this, well, initially I tried keeping it clean, but I found it was simply far, far faster to just leave it as a big mess. And even then, I'm not saying it's fast, I'm saying it's faster. There's so many different Polyomino things going on here. I don't know if this would benefit from some sort of game tray system to hold these in place. There's just so many different tiles that constantly pulling from the right spot and putting back in the right spot as you load damage on and off things. I don't know if that's better or worse than just having a giant pile that you dig through, but that is a little frustrating there. The towers themselves, the game has a configuration to scale it for different player counts in the sense that the different players have different spots where you can place your towers, and it is a good system. I like the system. What I don't like about the system is that the base game, these towers you see here, they're from the Kickstarter, they're extra. They will not be in a retail copy of the game if you get them. And I like these towers. These I like a lot. They both add a 3D feel to the board, as well as being, well, solid and in place. What I don't like is the little plastic shield cards that go on top of the spots in the default version of the game. Those are both constantly moving around, they're hard to see, they are another fiddly aspect of the game. And then the towers, you're constantly trading in towers, trading them up, returning them as they get damaged, buying new ones. There's a lot of fiddliness on these card trays, and this over here, specifically these towers, these I very much do feel like they would benefit from some sort of tray system. At some point during this week, I plan on looking online to 3D print some sort of tray for these cards because I think they absolutely need it. To be able to carry them around in a single shot, not have to organize them, tear them down, and constantly be fidgeting with these piles, I think that would be immensely beneficial, and I do recommend looking into a tray system for the towers if you get your hands on this game. And then secondly, at higher player counts, and this is one of the areas where the game did throw me a curveball as to what it is. No matter how much I enjoyed, it's a little bit not what I was expecting. I personally have been enjoying this game primarily at solo and 2-player. Once you even enter a 3rd player, I haven't even tried 4 or 5, I find that the rewards ratio of the game versus the fiddliness versus other people managing all that stuff, it goes down a bit. I don't like it quite as much at more than 2 players. For 1 or 2 players, I've been enjoying it. More than 2 players, it's fine. It's not bad, but it's a step down from what I was expecting, which is interesting because I didn't really picture this as a solo game when I got it. Of course, I knew it could be played solo, but I thought this would be more of a fun, cooperative Polyomino experience, and it delivers that a bit at 2 players, and again, I would play it at 3. I just don't like it quite as much. As far as what I can see others not liking about this game, there are going to be a few things, and the first one is going to be my potentially biggest complaint, feeding off that last complaint of my own, which is going to be this game is very, very subject to the alpha player problem. The alpha player problem, if you're not familiar, is the idea that in a cooperative game, you have a single player who's controlling how to optimize around the game in order to win. You're like, well, no, if you place this here, we can do this, and if you move this here, we can do that. And then effectively, you don't even need the other players, you just need that single dominating player who tells everyone what to do. And fortunately, with the people I've been playing it, we have a good system in place. We have a good degree of leeway and trust and not getting in each other's ways, and we've built up that pattern. But if you are playing this with somebody who is an alpha player, combined with the fact that it is very tough to actually make the game work, very often you'll be reconfiguring turns in order to try to optimize how you can actually get out safely while preserving your towers, while doing what you do. Like I said, the difficulty in this game I find to be excellent and on point. But that also means that the more people you're playing with it, the less you're in each other's heads and the less you have a cohesive plan, and the more you kind of want to say, this is what we should be doing. And that is going to be a problem, or I could see it being a problem for the wrong group, and it's worth being aware of that. As a solo game, you're not going to have that problem at all unless you like telling yourself what to do all the time. But the more players you have and the worse that dynamic is, it is very much something to be aware of in this game. And then the second thing, which again feeds off that, is there's lots of thinking and rethinking your turn. You are frequently going to be taking your actions sequentially, doing what you need to do, and then realizing that you have a single spot you didn't really cover, and you're like, wait, if we take back this and we do that and we undo this, and maybe you move your hero here and I'll move my hero here and I'll cast this spell, then we'll get what we need to do. Which is, fine for me, especially solo. I've been having no problem with that whatsoever. I don't mind that puzzle and reconfiguring, but for some people, you may just not like that, and that could be the difference as to why I have not had a problem winning this game or the difficulty, while others have. If you lock yourself into what I've done is over, even though nothing's changed, even though the information hasn't changed, if you don't like reconfiguring to actually find that perfect combination of moves, then this game will either be harder or maybe you just don't like that. I don't really know, but it's something to be aware of. The difficulty plus the disconnect on theme is another thing, which is, like, going back to this whole difficulty thing. If you were expecting a light, simple Polyomino game, this is not it. It's interesting. One of those things, when you look at games like Marvel United, you see, oh, Marvel United, it's a cute little cartoon accessible game, and to a certain extent, Marvel United is. Marvel United is very lightweight and accessible. And Kingdom Rush is not lightweight and accessible. It is certainly winnable, and you can tune down those difficulty levels. But this is a challenging experience, which for me, by the way, is a huge pro. One of my biggest concerns with this game was that it was going to be too dialed down, too simple. A Polyomino cooperative game? I mean, how are you going to make that tense? How are you going to do that? And for me, it works, but if you are expecting something on the lighter side, this is very much not that. The replayability is another thing which I can see being a problem. For me, it hasn't. I have already played through half the game, plus replaying through half the game as well, as I taught it to other people to get that 2 and 3 player experience in. And for myself, I very much enjoyed replaying through the levels, but I could see it being a bit samey, because the configurations are going to be the same every single time once you replay a level. You'll be setting up the same stacks of the ordering of the various enemies attacking you, and it might feel like I've done this before, and maybe you constantly want new scenarios, and I'm sure there will be people creating their own new scenarios, and I do recommend checking them out, because I could see for some people having the 10 or so missions in the base game possibly being a little boring as you go through it. I'm not sure on that one. That one, like I said already, for myself, it hasn't been an issue, but it could be a factor. And then lastly, and this is a point in what I can see others not liking, but also should be in my own category as well, which is the rulebook could certainly have been better. The reason I left this and what I can see others not liking instead of what I didn't like personally is because the rulebook, at the end of the day, I've seen and read far, far worse. Getting this from reading the rulebook and to playing the game was not that hard, and I didn't have that many issues. But what I would say is, however not hard it was, it could have been much easier. The structure of the rulebook is a little confusing at times, and there are certain things that I had to look up online because I didn't even know how to officially win the game. There's some competing information in the rulebook that says, check the scenario book, and then the scenario book doesn't say anything at all, and then you have to kind of find the last page 14 in the rulebook that kind of says on the side, well, I'll not just check the scenario book, but only if the scenario book doesn't say. It's a back and forth. Again, at the end of the day, it was not a big problem, but it's certainly something that could have been better. As far as my final thoughts on this game, I mean, I said at the beginning, I like this game. I like this game quite a lot. Kingdom Rush was one of my most anticipated Kickstarter games, and it does not disappoint. I've had to readjust my expectations as to exactly where it fits in my collection, because I am primarily viewing this as a solo experience. A little bit of 2-player as well, but a lot more solo, which was not the initial experience I thought this was going to be. But rest assured, despite reconfiguring those expectations, it still very much is a game that I have been enjoying. It still is a game I would very much recommend, both 1-player and 2-player. 3 and 4 as well, but less so. It is a very enjoyable Polyomino tower defense game that gives you a lot of different options, a lot of power abilities, the depth of the game. Like I said already, I was worried this would be so much simpler. My one big concern was that I would get the game, I would get it to the table, and I'd be like, okay, Polyomino, 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 okay, next, done, and move on from it. And that is very much not the experience I've gotten. I've had to sit there and struggle and break my teeth and challenge myself how I'm going to reconfigure this tower and upgrade those towers and attack with this hero and combine these heroes' powers. It has been immensely enjoyable mixing up the scenarios I'm playing, the heroes I'm playing with, what I'm doing here. It is a ton of fun, and definitely one of my highlights of 2020 till now. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this review. I do recommend checking out Kingdom Rush or adding it to your collection. If anything that I've said resonates with you, I think this is a game that will work well for you. Until next time, have a good one.